All right, we have our panelists up now. And let's start with Anthony Liberatoscioli. Anthony, it's good to see you. He is the chair. I hope did I say that correctly, Anthony?
Beautifully, thank you.
Thank you. I practiced. He is the chair, he's my friend, and he is the chair of the board of Astoria Park Alliance, who's co-hosting this event tonight. You might have seen Anthony at one of the many volunteer events in the park. He's there at Shoreline Cleanup. He's responsible for getting our bocce court in the park and our little free library. And he's a great friend to artists. He's produced numerous events in Astoria Park, including Shore Fest and the Father's Day car show. So he's going to talk to us in a little bit about how to prepare your event for the park, how to get the permits and such. You can learn more about the upcoming events at APA by visiting, or the volunteer opportunities by visiting AstoriaParkAlliance.org or checking out their social media account. We also have Jennifer Sellers here. Jennifer, give a wave. Hi, Jen. Thanks for being here. Jen is the VP of, oh, thank you. Jen is the VP of Booking and Operations at CEG Presents, an NYC-based indie promoter. She is also the showcase director for the music and tech conference Mondo.NYC. And most recently, she is on the planning committee for Queens Rising, which is an arts and culture initiative that will be happening in June. She's going to talk to us about that a little bit later, but she's also the organizer for the Astoria Park Music Stroll that happened with the Astoria Park Alliance last June, and I believe is coming back to the park this June, right, Jen? Yeah, so she'll talk to us a little bit about her experience planning that. Next, we have Brian Soliwoda. Hi, Brian. Brian is one of the co-founders and trustee members of Salt Tree Art, a Queens-based nonprofit with a mission of creating rich community spaces that unite arts and ecology in unexpected, educational, and inspiring ways. As an artist, Brian has worked in theater, film, and TV, as well as in puppetry. And with Salt Tree, he has created eco sculpture. He's received several grants and fellowships, including the LaGuardia Airport Arts Grant and Burning Man Global Art Fund Grant, and he also freelances with special events. So we'll talk to Brian later about how he creates these events, what it's like to put an event in the park or an art piece in the park, and also how to utilize nature and create an event while interacting with the audience in the park. Thanks for being here, Brian. And last, but certainly not least, is Elizabeth Masella. She is the Senior Public Art Coordinator with NYC Parks Art in the Parks program. Hi, Elizabeth. She will start us off tonight with a quick run through of the types of visual artworks NYC Parks permit and the process of putting them in the park. Thank you so much for being here, Elizabeth. And thank you for sharing your knowledge, and also for being such a great friend to our parks and a friend to artists and making this all possible. So I'm gonna let you take the screen, and I'll see you after the presentation.
Great, thank you so much for the introduction. I'm glad to be here tonight and happy to be among my fellow presenters. I'm going to share my screen. I have a short presentation that will show you some examples of public art that we've had in the parks, you know, get people thinking it doesn't have to be just one type of thing. I have some examples of projects that have been installed in Astoria in recent years. And then I just have some information on the public art process. I'm happy to answer any questions. We always try to make it as easy as possible. Dealing with a city agency can be a little intimidating to some people. So we do try to make that as easy as possible, you know, working with artists as well as with communities. So I am going to share my screen, and I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. So here is a great example of a public artwork in Queens. to start us off, this is a functional artwork, but it kind of shows you, artwork doesn't just have to be a sculpture that you look at. It can be something that you can sit on, talk to a friend on, really interact with. This was at Rufus King Park in Queens. This was the winners of the Uniqlo Park Expressions grant, which we had in 2017 and 2018. So just a little bit about the Art in the Parks program. We are part of the Art and Antiquities division at NYC Parks. The Art and Antiquities division also includes our Monuments division. There's more than 800 public monuments in our permanent collection. There's quite a few in and around Astoria. Our monuments crew does try to get to every monument at least once a year for annual maintenance to keep everything in great condition. So that we have, for the Monuments division, we have a staff of about 8 people. On the other side, the temporary public art program, it's myself and one other public art coordinator named Naomi Rodriguez, and we permit temporary public artworks in parks citywide. That's not just Queens, we're all over the place. If you're in a park in the city and there's art there, it's likely that it came through our program. Public artworks can be on view for up to 1 year, but there's a wide range in between there. Some projects are shorter, some projects are on view for that full year. And so here, more information can be found about our program at this website. I'll stop here if you wanted to take a screenshot. In addition to our, getting an overview of our monuments and also what's on for Art in the Parks, we have this great interactive map that shows you where all of the projects are. We also have information about our program, including submission guidelines. You can also find information about the Arsenal Gallery, which is in the Parks headquarters in Central Park at 64th Street. So that is also part of our program, our one indoor space. And the Arsenal Gallery, we program exhibitions, about 5 or 6 a year, all dealing with themes of nature, the urban environment, parks, and parks history. So a lot of people might ask, why public art? Public art is an outdoor gallery. We call our Art in the Parks program the world's largest open air gallery, not just in terms of sites that we're in, but just number of artworks. I think we typically in a year permit 60 exhibitions. Some of those exhibitions might contain, multiple artworks. Our program started in 1967, so this will be our 55th year. I don't have the exact numbers, but I think we've programmed something like over 2,000 artworks since our inception, which is a lot. And I think we've been in over 200 parks, individual parks. Public art, there's a lot of motivations why an artist or an organization might want to exhibit artwork in parks citywide. There's the aesthetic, beautification, visual enhancement, kind of bring something to the park that wasn't there before, draw attention to the park. Intellectual, mental stimulation. A lot of artworks that we do are educational in nature, or maybe have a message that an artist or an organization wants to bring attention to. Social, not every artwork has to be participatory or engaging the public, but they can. Economic, we work with a lot of bids and local organizations that might want to bring people to their park, for the reasons of tourism or, supporting the creative class, making a park into a destination. Public art can also be promotional, advancing parks mission, promoting green space, the enjoyment of green spaces, being outdoors, etc. I have some examples here to show you of public art. A lot of people think, when they think of public art, they think sculpture, traditional, bronze. It doesn't necessarily need to be that. And in fact, most projects that we permit are not that. This is a project that was installed in the water north of Inwood Hill Park several years ago. So we do permit things in the water. It can be a little complicated, but it is possible. This is an overhead view of a project with the Art Students League in Riverside Park at 145th Street. So these are very large monumental scale sculptures. This is a multi-artist exhibition down in City Hall Park in Manhattan. You can see the variety of the different types of pieces here. You know, tall totemic piece in the back, this more interactive piece with the kind of colorful shadows being cast by it. These are wayfinding signs that were part of an artwork. You know, it's a lighter touch piece. It actually doesn't have that much of a footprint, but it has a great impact, you know, on the site, and it has information, you know, drawing attention to things in the park, but also serving as an artwork. This is another piece with the Art Students League in Riverside Park South. This was on Randall's Island. This is more interactive and maybe more of a functional piece, an interactive piece, quite large. This is on the more ephemeral side. A project like this might be on view for, you know, just a few days, just given the nature of it. So again, you know, some artists want their piece to be on view for as long as possible. Other projects are intended to be much shorter. This is in Washington Park in Brooklyn. So this little house here that was interactive as well. We do a lot of fence installations. I'm sure you've probably seen the Photoville project in Astoria Park. We've actually found that fence installations are a really great way for artists who may not be sculptors, like photographers or painters, to have their work in the park, but it's also a great way for an organization that maybe doesn't have the funding to or the resources to mount a large sculptural installation. The fences in the parks can be your canvas. It's a great way to have a project that is maybe low cost, high impact. And our parks have lots of fences of all different kinds. So that is something we've been seeing a lot more of citywide. This is just a fun project that was in Marine Park in Brooklyn, a Loch Ness monster in the marsh there. So I just wanted to also highlight a few projects that we did in Astoria Park in recent years. The most recent was with Photoville, which is a citywide exhibition. Maybe some of you have gone to their festival in Brooklyn Bridge Park. With the pandemic, that wasn't possible for them to have that large gathering. So they figured we'll bring it to the parks. So we had works in, I think, about 10 parks citywide, all 5 boroughs. The artists that they selected are all photographers who either live in the neighborhoods or the artwork that they are presenting has to do with the neighborhood. In 2020, the project in the park was with Salvador Espinoza. It was called Q100, and it was about the bus that goes through Queens to Rikers Island, and about the family members and friends who ride that bus to go visit their incarcerated loved ones. On the right is a project called Malika, Building Power and Safety for Our Communities. And these pictures were taken in Astoria Park, and it's an organization that teaches self-love as well as self-defense and verbal de-escalation to women. So before the exhibition went on view, they met with a photographer who photographed them in the park, and then the photos are still on display in the park. That exhibition will be ending in March, and Photoville will be returning later this year. We've done a couple of projects at Astoria Heights Playground, where we've worked with the Friends of Astoria Heights Playground. These pieces were from 2018, and they were installed around Halloween. Children worked with the artist Penelope Eleni to make these little Halloween masks, which were installed in the playground. We've also worked with the Noguchi Museum with their teen advisory board for this project in 2019, which they interviewed people in the neighborhood and then took their words and installed them on the fences in the park. This is in Rainey Park, across the street from the Noguchi Museum. We also worked with a student art project through the Center for Educational Innovation. Hoyt Avenue sitting area was this kind of sad paved lot just outside of Astoria Park. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it. So these 6 benches were installed here temporarily in 2019 and were painted by students at schools throughout Queens, and they all kind of feature a message about, you know, social justice or, you know, the environment, you know, issues that they're concerned about. That was a great project. And you're probably all likely familiar with Socrates Sculpture Park, which, sorry about that. Socrates Sculpture Park is a park. They do have their own permitting program, so they're kind of part of our program, but also more of an independent organization. But that is one of the destinations for public art in Queens, in my opinion. And they do a lot of great projects. We also have a lot of artists who go through Socrates Sculpture Park and then they come to us later on, or vice versa. So in terms of, you know, we work with individual artists. We also work with a variety of different, you know, organizations to do public art. That includes public art nonprofits like Public Art Fund, Creative Time, and More Art. We work with parks partners like Socrates Sculpture Park, Friends of the High Line, Madison Square Park Conservancy, who have their own permitting programs. We work with business improvement districts, such as the Times Square Alliance, Myrtle Avenue Brooklyn Partnership in Fort Greene, the Dumbo Improvement District, Two Trees Management in Brooklyn, as well as commercial galleries. Here's some examples here. Cultural institutions, Queens Museum, they actually helped curate the Photoville exhibitions at Astoria Park. MoMA PS1, we've done a few projects with them, another Queens-based arts organization. The Bronx Museum of the Arts, Snug Harbor Cultural Center and Botanical Garden in Staten Island. We've also worked with, you know, independent artists. I think it's a healthy mix. I'd say half and half. You know, artists working with organizations or organizations working collectively or independent art. And then the other part would be independent artists. And speaking of independent artists, I saw an artist, a fantastic Queens-based artist, I think from Astoria, Sherwin Banfield, who we have a current project on view in Flushing Meadows, Corona Park of LL Cool J. If you haven't gone to see it, I encourage you to. It's right off the 7 train entrance to Flushing Meadows, Corona Park. Art in the Parks application guidelines. You can find all of these on our website. We don't have an application form per se, but we do ask anybody who's submitting to include the following information in their proposal. All of this information will help us review the project and either determine, you know, a good location if you don't have one in mind, or just to review safety, durability, etc. So these are all really important things to include when you're submitting. So once the proposal comes into the Art and Antiquities office, we'll do the first review. If we have any questions or anything, we will get back to the artist and give them an opportunity to update their proposal. We don't usually turn down a proposal if something's missing, and we try to work collaboratively with artists to make their projects happen. Things that we might, you know, call out as missing information if something's unclear, so that when we move on to the next step to the park managers and our directors of operations, we have all the information there for them to look at. We also share with our borough commissioners within the Parks Department, and then we would also share with sister agencies if required. That might be DOT. Some spaces in parks are not specifically parks, they're shared with the Department of Transportation, but we work very closely with them. And we do share projects with community groups who might be active in a park for awareness. So in terms of selection criteria, it says selection criteria here. We don't typically select an artwork for a specific site, but these are different things that we are thinking about when we are reviewing a proposal. We want to make sure that the project has artistic merit. I think that can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. I guess thinking about artistic merit, what we're really looking for is, can the artist achieve what they're promising? Like, do they have the experience working in the public realm to execute the project in a way that is safe and successful? If they're looking to do, a team or community-based project, like, have they had experience with that? We look at site suitability. One thing to mention is artists don't necessarily have to have a park in mind when they apply. We do get a lot of proposals where an artist wants to do something in their local park. It's site responsive, it is thinking about the park specifically, and that's great. But if artists, they have an idea, they just don't know where to go, we're happy to provide a list of sites for them to consider. But when we are looking at sites, we are thinking about, will the artwork fit within the site? Will it impede regular park usage? Is it considering who's using the project? A project maybe dealing with more mature subject matter might not be appropriate for a playground. Thinking about, is it gonna, if we wouldn't put something in the middle of a soccer field, because that just wouldn't work. So we're always looking to, work with an artist to find the right place. We also rely a lot on our operations staff in their review to advise on how, those certain parts of the park are used. They can best advise, hey, this part of the park isn't great because things get damaged here. So, and in terms of organizational capacity, we want to make sure the artist has demonstrated some experience with planning public programs or public art projects, that they agree to monitor and maintain the artwork. We don't require regular cleaning, but we do ask the artists keep an eye on their artworks, and if anything is damaged, that they're prepared to repair the artwork in a timely manner, just to make sure that nothing becomes dangerous or unsafe, or whether by human hands or the elements. We also, we don't require artists to submit a budget. That's one thing I should mention. Unfortunately, in our 55 years, our program has never received any funding from the city. So unfortunately, we're unable to provide funding except in rare instances when we do have a grant available. Sherwin's project was funded by the Alliance for Flushing Meadows Corona Park. We may be coming back with that later this year, and that is open to Queens-based artists. But aside from the rare grant opportunity, we unfortunately don't have any funding to provide to artists. So we just want to make sure that an artist, realizes the undertaking it is to have a public artwork. We're always happy to approve a concept in advance, and then, wait for the artist to raise the funding. I think I actually have a few projects I'm working on now that have been in the works for probably 5 to 6 years and are finally happening. So we're always happy to, get you the approvals you need and wait until you have the funding. I think the two most key things in our review that we're looking for is artwork durability, making sure that the artwork can withstand outdoor weather conditions in the seasons that you're looking to have it on view, as well as human interaction, that no one can climb it or push it over, things like that, and that the artwork is carefully planned, ensuring sound fabrication and installation. We don't want anything to fall apart. We can advise on best practices for securing artworks. So that's something we're happy to do, but we do want to make sure that the artist is going to create something in the park that will be sturdy. And we also just, that goes hand in hand with just making sure that the proposal would not present any public safety hazards. So exhibitor responsibilities, as I mentioned, we unfortunately don't have any funding to give to artists and organizations. So it is a huge, we realize it's a huge hurdle on artists and organizations to raise money to do projects in parks. Though I definitely think there are ways to, maximize the impact of your project. As I mentioned, fence installations are great. But exhibitors are responsible for all aspects of the project, including fabrication, installation, deinstallation. That would be rigging, engineering drawings. We typically don't need engineering drawings unless the piece is like very large. And site restoration, that might include filling in holes in the ground. If it's on a fence, just making sure the fence doesn't get damaged. Maintenance, which I touched on before. We also require all exhibitors to have general liability insurance. That is to ensure that if anything were to happen to someone by the artwork, injury or property damage, that coverage is there. I don't know if we've had anybody who's needed to use it, but it is good to have when you're working in the public realm. And then we also require a bond that can range, from $500 to, a couple thousand. We rarely go up to 10,000 unless it was a really large, really invasive installation with multiple artworks. The bond we don't cash, but we will return it at the end of the exhibition once the artwork has been removed and the site restored. I feel like I'm forgetting a lot of information, so I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Our contact information is here. My contact information is on the left, and my colleague Naomi Rodriguez is on the right. We're always happy to answer questions that people might have. Even if you're in the early stages and you just want to know what may or may not be possible, we're happy to have those conversations. So feel free to take a picture of this here. And I think that's it, but I'm happy to answer any other questions that anyone might have. I see there's some questions in the chat.
Yeah, if you'd like to take those, Elizabeth,
Yeah.
please go for it.
Yeah, I see Jennifer's question, which is a really great question. Can you advise on where an artist can seek funding? Your borough's Arts Council is a great place to start. The Queens Arts Council, if you're a Queens-based artist, which I imagine most people here today are, they fund artists who are locally based. They provide monetary grants. Some more creative ways you can find funding for your project is, maybe partnering with a local business who can provide other resources to you, whether that's building materials or, discount or something like that. I realize it is really the biggest challenge to artists and organizations to find the funding for this. And, I wish there was more we could do as the Parks Department for that, but I think local organizations and your arts councils are the best places to go for grants. I think you can do a lot with public art with, $1,000 budget, and you could even do less, it takes a lot of creativity to work in public art, but, we still have no shortage of artists who, find a way to make it happen. I see Susan has a question here. What is time frame and deadlines? That is a great question. And of course, information that I left out. So we have an open application process. We don't have any deadlines. So you're welcome to apply any time of year. The only thing we do ask is that artists or organizations submit 4 to 6 months in advance of when they want to exhibit, just to allow enough time for review. I try to get back to people pretty quickly, but when we're working with our operations staff who are working out in the parks, they're not always at computers. So we do just ask for people's patience while we review. In addition to internal review and the paperwork, we also, have a site visit. We also share information about the project with the community board. So it can take a few weeks. I see Raina's question, only one person is accepted. I'm not sure if the question means for like a specific park. We are working with, dozens of artists simultaneously at one time. For a small park, we might just have one project depending on what the park can, what kind of space there is. But if multiple artists were interested in a park, we could consider exhibiting, more than one artwork in a park. Or we could do, what we typically do is one artwork at a time. But I mean, I guess the answer to the question is, we work with a lot of different artists simultaneously. And there wouldn't really be a limit on, one artist at a time in a park, but it would depend on the artwork itself. Brian, I see in the chat, has a great question, asking if a project is going to be grant funded, can an artist secure a park's location prior to the grant approval? Yep, we work that way with artists too. If you already have a concept in mind, we can work on getting that approval for you from parks. And this is a common request we have. Once a project is approved, we can offer a letter of support, which might help with securing funding. I think that answers that question. So you don't have to have funding to get approved on our end, is the short answer. Any other questions? I'm sure I've left it. Actually, you know what? I just remembered one thing, and I won't take too much more time because I know there's other presenters. There's generally not too many like hard do's and don'ts for public art, but we do ask artists to avoid attaching things to trees. Our trees are very important. So that's the one thing. Anything relying on electricity can be, a bit of a challenge. There are ways around it, such as battery or solar power. Those have mixed results. We don't allow anchoring to any pavers in the parks, but you can anchor to asphalt. I think that's generally it. Again, if you have an idea, no idea is too crazy to ask us about, and we're happy to give advice on, do's and don'ts. It's a lot of information, so afterwards, if you want to ask me any other questions, let me know. Whenever I run through this, I'm like, wow, that's a lot. I know it's a lot to take in, but that's kind of the nuts and bolts of the program.
That was amazing, Elizabeth, and those images were very cool. I actually had a question. What is a bond? Is that like, would that be let me turn my video on here too, so you're not talking to the darkness here.
It's basically a security deposit. It's like, it's a check.
Oh, okay. Can it be a personal check, or does it need to be?
Usually certified check is okay. But we don't cash in, we'll return it once the exhibition's over. Okay.
All right. That's something for everyone to keep in mind too. That was amazing. And it was so cool. I was wondering about those boxes. I was like, when did this happen in Astoria Park? The ones by the bridge? Because it looks like Astoria Park, but it was Randall's Island. So it tricked me. It tricked me. Yes, everyone, I do want to say thank you, Elizabeth, so much. And, when she says that she will contact you and give you all the answers you need, she has been amazing about being in touch with me, and an incredible resource. And I really can't thank you enough, Elizabeth. This is a great program. And I really hope we just see like fences full of art in Astoria Park. I think that'd be so cool. So if anyone else has if we don't have any more questions for Elizabeth right now, you can ask them again at the end. But I think we're going to move on now to Anthony, because Anthony is going to share, like, as Elizabeth said before, the groups that maintain the park, such as the Astoria Park Alliance, they can really be great partners. And Anthony has done a lot of events in the park that have included artists and musicians, and he's going to talk a little bit about that and the process of getting your permits and getting all your ducks lined up. So take it away, Anthony, unless you'd like me to ask you some questions.
No. Thank you very much, Ashley. And thanks everyone for being here. So as Ashley mentioned, I'm with Astoria Park Alliance. Astoria Park Alliance, just to give you all some brief background, was formed back in 2007 by some volunteers who were looking to, frankly, start cleaning up the park. And so what started with a group of about 3 or 4 people who started meeting on weekends to clean up some litter grew and grew. And in 2017, the group filed for 501c3 nonprofit organization status. And that really kind of unleashed our desire to do more than just volunteering in the park, but also to produce events, free public events for the community. One of the things that's key about Astoria Park Alliance is that we are an all volunteer organization. We never charge for any of our events; they're all free to the public, and we try to dedicate ourselves to the park and to the community. I know from getting to know Ashley over these years that she's also been involved with APA. Also getting to know Jennifer Sellers, who you're going to speak with later, that the community of artists, particularly the community of Queens artists, is also really dedicated to New York City, to really the park system and to getting out their work to as many people as possible. And the New York City parks are a great place to do that. Let me tell you a bit about some of the events that we at APA have produced over the years, especially in the recent 5 years since we've become a 501c3. One of our big, more popular arts-related events, technically arts, is we host movie nights in the spring. And so we've hosted everything from Wonder Woman to Bohemian Rhapsody. And this coming June, we'll be back again with specials still to be announced movie night coming on June 3rd. So we hope you can consider coming out for that. Those movie nights are really a great opportunity to get hundreds of people in the park. Now, when it comes to having an event in the park, that first question, how many people will be there, is really key when it comes to your ability to kind of navigate through the Parks Department permitting process. Obviously, we know for an event like a movie night, it's going to be popular. There are going to be usually several hundred people there. For other smaller events, maybe on a weekday afternoon, something not as mass appeal as a movie night, you're not going to project hundreds of people. And so, maybe in some cases, your events won't even necessarily be something that you're projecting to have more than 25 people. And if that's the case, for something that small, you don't even necessarily need a permit. But it's that first question of how many people do I realistically expect are going to be there, that will guide you through the permitting process. So I put this in the chat earlier, but you can go to the New York City Parks Department website as kind of your starting point for when and how to apply for a special events permit in the parks. You can go to nycgovparks.org/permits, or you can go directly to the permit login page, which I put in through the chat. It's a little bit longer. Once you are applying for a special events permit in the park, and this can be for any kind of exhibition, performance, anything like that, like I said, the first key number is how many people realistically are going to be there. A special events permit is designed for an event that is expected to have anywhere from 25 to 500 people. So if you're expecting to do something really small that's not even going to have 25 people, or realistically it'll be on the smaller end, I would say, frankly, my advice is you don't even necessarily need to go through and the special events permitting process. If you're in that gray area, you're not sure, it's a great opportunity for you to reach out to your local parks organization. If you're an Astorian like us and you're thinking about doing something in Astoria Park, you can reach out to APA. And I know many of the other local parks in Queens also have their own affiliated kind of friends groups that help keep things clean and take care of the park. So they can definitely advise you about each individual park. So if you're thinking about doing something in an APA, reach out. I know Ashley just put our website on the chat. You can send an email to getinvolved@AstoriaParkAlliance.org, and that's how you can best reach us. Back to the permits now. All right, so you've determined, well, I want to have an event. It's probably going to have well more than 25 people there. Let me go ahead and file for a special events permit. Okay, how much money do I have to expect to spend here? Well, the good news is that the Parks Department has really kept the fee very manageable. When you file a permit through their website, it's only $25. You can pay that online as you're filing the permit. So it's really a pretty quick and easy process. The whole thing, beginning to end, will probably take you 10 minutes. You put in your credit card at the end, and there you go. Your special events permit is now filed. So that's the basic $25 fee just to apply. What other expenses do you have to consider? Well, you have to ask yourself, is this the type of performance where we're going to need amplified sound? If it is, then you're also going to need a separate permit, and that is the sound device application. Now, the sound device application does not happen through New York City Parks. For that, you're actually going to have to deal with your local police precinct. For us here in Astoria, that's the 114th precinct. It's located on Astoria Boulevard South, right next to the Burger King. And I give you the location because, yes, you are going to have to go in person to file that sound device application. It's a one-page document, really easy. I'm mentioning it to you second because the first things first is to apply with the Parks Department for their special events permit. Once you have that in, once you ideally have heard a response from the Parks Department, only then later in the process should you go to the 114th precinct. They have their own fee. It's $45 to file for a sound device application. Quick note with the precinct, they accept the fee only in a certified check or a money order. So you're going to have to go through the process of getting one of those as well. Usually there's about a separate $5 fee for most banks to get either a certified check or a money order. Next question in terms of what you'll have to deal with as well as event costs is electricity. Okay, so maybe you've determined that you're going to need some kind of amplification for whether it's sound or for music, or maybe it's poetry that you're speaking, some kind of recital, whatever it is, you're going to need sound, you're going to need electricity. Be prepared for how you're going to handle that in the park. As we just heard earlier, it's going to be difficult. Most parks are not going to have readily available electricity for you to tap into. Astoria Park is no exception to that. You know, we produce events all the time, including, like I mentioned earlier, the movie nights, which absolutely require power, but we have no way to directly tap into it. So how we have to handle that is by renting a generator. Again, presuming you don't have a generator yourself, what I would recommend, the place we use is Home Depot, frankly. You're going to be able to rent a generator for a few hours, maybe for a day if you'll need it, and your cost will be, depending on how long you're renting it for, anywhere from $50 to $100. And that'll vary depending on the length of time you're going to be having the rental, as well as the type of generator, you know, how much power you'll need. So those are your key expenses, really. Your $25 permit fee with New York City Parks, potentially if you're going to require sound, your $45 sound permit fee with the New York Police Department, and then potentially a generator rental fee. Once you've got those taken care of, you're basically now at the point where your costs are up to you, and it's going to depend on how you, how much you want to put into the event, what exactly you're looking to do. One thing I do want to make clear to everyone is when we are applying for permits ourselves at Astoria Park Alliance, we always make the commitment as we're applying that we're going to leave the park as we left it, as we found it, rather. And I hope that that's something that all of you, as you're doing performances in the park, art in the park, will also definitely adhere to. Leave it as you found it. And so that means clean up after yourselves. Encourage your guests, your spectators to also clean up after yourselves. With APA, as I mentioned, we started and we primarily are a volunteer organization that's really focused on cleaning up the park, beautifying the park as much as possible. So we've got a team of volunteers and pickers and trash bags who will, definitely scour the grounds of the park as we're doing the event to keep it clean. But if you're doing something on your own, I do want you all to be prepared to, care for this really wonderful resource we have, which is this great public land. One other piece I wanted to mention, both with regard to permit fees as well as cleanup. I've talked to you about these fees and how Astoria Park Alliance handles them. I know a lot of you maybe are considering doing your own event in the park. Let me tell you all this. You can consider it an announcement today. If you want to perform events in Astoria Park, I'm inviting everyone to partner with us. Reach out to Astoria Park Alliance. We will absolutely be willing and excited to partner with you on hosting the event, blasting it out there on social media, on our website to all of our partners, getting it out to local press, supporting you with volunteers ready to help you set up and clean up at the event. And yes, we'll even be willing to help file and cover the cost of the permit fee as well. So if you want to partner with APA to host your own event, reach out to us. We absolutely are ready and willing to do that. We want arts in the park. And so whatever we can do to make it easier, please, we invite you to come to us. Couple other very quick questions, and then very quick points, and then I'll take questions if you have any. Timeline. I know that's often something people are wondering. Well, how early should I apply? And what the Parks Department tells applicants is that you should try to file at least a month ahead of your desired event. Jennifer Sellers, who you're going to be hearing from soon, she's a wonderful events producer, and she actually partnered with APA last year to bring us this great event, the Astoria Park Musical Walking Tour, which we're going to be really excited to have again in the park this coming June 25th. And Jen and I filed the permit with the Parks Department for this year's June event already. I think about 6 weeks ago or so now. So we definitely got in well ahead of the 1 month timeline. And frankly, from my experience, I would suggest don't leave it to just a month ahead of time. Try to give yourself at least 2 months if you can to get the permit in, to give Parks Department enough time to review it and get back to you. Which brings me to the next point. So what is that review process? Well, Parks Department will have their own special events office review that permit first. They may have questions for you about what you're planning to set up on the parkland, or where specifically within the park you're planning to set up, and they'll reach out to you for some clarification. Presuming that all checks out, they'll then take it through the review process to the local level. They'll reach out to the local parks manager. In the case of Astoria, we have a wonderful parks manager who works on site, Shirley Echeverria. So New York City Parks is going to reach out to Shirley and say, hey, we've got an application for this date. What do you think about this? Can your staff handle it? So the local level of Parks Department will get a chance to weigh in. They may also reach out, depending on the size of the events, to the community board to give them a chance to weigh in. And again, those kind of things will depend on the size and scale of what kind of event you're hoping to host in the park. So I think we've covered fees, we've covered timeline, we've covered some of the basics in terms of what to expect. At this point, I think I want to pause and see if anyone has any questions.
We did have a few in the chat, Anthony. Would you like me to read them back to you?
Yeah, I'm looking at this first one from Susan. Do permits expire? That's a good question, Susan. When you're applying for a special events permit, you are applying for a certain date. So you're going to have a certain date in mind. Again, as that example of the musical walking tour, we applied for the date of June 25th from 1 to 4 p.m. And so when we apply for that permit, we're putting in what our estimated start time is to begin setting up, 11 a.m. or so, as well as what our estimated time is to finish our cleanup, probably around 5 p.m. or so. So we're putting all that in, day and time of event, on our permit itself. And then your permit, once approved, will cover you for that date. It's not something that goes on in perpetuity. It's pegged to an individual date.
Do you plan for rain dates as well, Anthony?
That is an excellent question, and a difficult one. I will say that it will depend, and I'm sorry to give a vague answer like that. But what I try to do is if it's a smaller scale event, it's going to be something that we'll plan to do rain or shine, and I'll generally try to suggest a larger time window, and then as we get closer to the day itself, start to look at the forecast carefully. Let's say we've budgeted from 12 to 5 p.m., but we're seeing that there's going to be rain in the morning. Well, you want to have some flexibility to maybe shift your event to start at 3 if it'll clear up by then. So I think having that kind of flexibility within your date is a good idea. If you do want to outright apply for a separate date as your rain date, that's going to require a new permit application. So that's a good question. If you do want to essentially hold 2 dates, you're going to need 2 permits. Okay,
good to know. Thank you. And it looks like there's another one about dance events. Have you ever hosted a dance event? I know they've been there. Dancers have been part of Shorefest at times.
We have not, though I have to say we are very anxious. If anyone is familiar with some of the exciting renovations that have happened in Astoria Park in recent years, one of the great renovations has been to what was formerly the diving pool area. Now, the Astoria Park pool, which opened, I think, about 100 years ago now, or close to 100 years ago, it's a large rectangular Olympic-sized pool, and on either end of that rectangle, there is a semicircle. One end was a kid's spray shower area, the other was a diving pool. Unfortunately, that diving pool kind of fell into disrepair, I think in the early 80s, and basically was closed. And so it was nothing more than just an empty pit for decades. And recently, as part of the major renovation of the park, the Parks Department has filled in and decked over that area to create a performance plaza. Now, they did that right at the same time that COVID hit. And so the performance plaza was finished right as we were all dealing with COVID. And so no events have happened there yet. We do certainly hope and frankly expect that performance plaza will be available as a potential event site this year. I do have a meeting coming up with local parks staff soon to find out about our ability to access that space. But this is a long wind up to me saying, if and when that space does become publicly available for events, that is the perfect event space for something like a dance.
I agree. That would be really cool. I'm just gonna, I muted myself, so starting my video. In the interest of time, I'm just gonna quickly, there were 3 more questions, but I think I know the answers to these, and correct me if I'm wrong. One was, are the details pertinent to all parks that you just went through? And I think yes, and also no, and you should check with your local park if you're thinking of doing an event there, right? And the next one is electricity, free electricity in the parks. I don't think that's something that exists anymore, and if it did, it's not, I wouldn't count on it.
Yeah, not gonna happen. Don't expect it at all.
And finally, sorry. Yes, the source there.
Parks doesn't actually own our own lampposts. They're DOT property, and from what I've heard from others is that the process has changed and it's extremely difficult to get a pull tab.
Very good to know. That's important information. So those generators. And finally, do you get a refund on your permit if you if it rains. I don't think you do, right, Anthony?
No, you don't. No.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all good. I want to continue on to Jennifer, because we're actually going to get a very good example now with Jennifer Sellers and also Brian Soliwoda in just a moment. They're going to explain some of the events they've actually done in the park. Jennifer, as we were just talking about, you were responsible for organizing the Astoria Park walking tour, and you're going to do it again. So why don't you fill us in on some of that?
That's cool. Yeah, I was, as I'm listening to Anthony talk about all the processes, I'm thinking, yep, we have to do that, and that's next, and yes. But so last year, I've been loosely involved with the Astoria Park Alliance for a little while, and they were always on my radar as an Astoria resident. So, I mean, the park is wonderful. I love walking through it. I've always sort of envisioned or wondered why there wasn't more music specifically in the park. And with that, I had this sort of epiphany during COVID, which was, I'm really bored and I want to organize something. And it's pretty much what I do day to day anyway. So my brain is very much shifted to constant planning, operations, and sort of mindful of sort of how an event rolls through from beginning, middle, and end. So they were on my radar, and I did give some of their team members a call. We had a brief meeting about my idea. I had a vision. And then little by little, we just sort of engaged and discussed and came up with a basic plan, specifically what's needed for the event. What does the event look like? For me in particular, during that time, you know, social distancing was a really important thing. We weren't really sure if people would come out and how comfortable everybody would feel. So the event was ultimately made up and set up to be a wandering space. So we're not going to have one giant stage where everyone's going to stand around and watch a handful of bands. What we ended up doing was providing 4 pop-up tents with 4 generators providing electricity to 4 different artists, and they played and just had a wonderful experience. We had a beautiful day that ended later in rain, but it started off beautiful. And you know, the event was basically put together with the intention of bringing the community out together, and I think that the success was because of everyone's efforts. I mean, the artists were incredible. Everybody promoted it. We had a great team of volunteers from APA. They were so super supportive. And, you know, I think that what I would suggest to anyone looking to do an event in a park is to look first at the park that you have in mind, or the outdoor space that you have in mind, because I know the TOT has a lot of open streets now. So consider that as well. But look at who's doing what in the park already and who's supporting the park and the location, and just do some investigating. I think any event would go better as a collaboration versus you just trying to figure out how to do it yourself. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, as Anthony mentioned, you sort of have to anticipate who's going to come out, who's going to support you, and is this event for the community? Is this event for the artist community? Is it for families? Is it, you know, who's coming out? Who do you want to tell about the event? And part of that mindset when you're curating or creating what the event or the, I guess even to the realm of an artistic installation, is what you're gonna, how you're gonna talk about it, who's gonna come out to check it out. So, you know, one element of a successful event is, you know, finding the right partnerships, getting the community engaged. You know, we reached out to a lot of the area local businesses and, you know, popped in with some posters, let them know what was going on. And after this first year, I think we got a really good sense of how, you know, when people come out to support a park in one location, they're ultimately supporting a lot of local business in the community, and that gets everybody on board. So, you know, one aspect is to kind of pitch it that way when you're looking for support. So, you know, to what's been spoken of to this at this point, I think that when you have a decent vision of what you're looking to do, understanding the limitations that you're going to have when it comes to outdoor spaces, obviously, you know, the power, but the structure, what's being offered. There's a lot of limitations in the parks as far as making like a big music festival, for example. I learned that you know, you need additional permits, obviously, for amplified sound. So in our case, because we had generators and mostly acoustic performances, we didn't end up needing an amplified sound permit because it wasn't that loud. So that was a consideration, but also, you know, you can't really bring in vendors, you can't sell things in parks. So you want to be aware of all those parameters and work with your event or your art in that magnitude. You know, I like to think what I would want to happen and then also work backwards with how to operate it. You know, who I'm going to need. Do I have even people to help me set it up? That's key. Human beings, your team is really important. So who do you have to collaborate with? I'll just kind of end it there, is super important. And, you know, we're definitely looking to do the walking tour again, because it was successful and it was really engaging with the community, and it seemed to bring out families and people really got use of the park in a way that maybe they did before, because they spent a little extra time and they wandered around the whole thing versus just bringing a ball and playing around. So I would like to highlight that we're doing the second annual, and we are seeking performance artists to be involved. I'm going to drop a submission form into the chat because I have that up, if you'd like to be considered for performance, but and consider too, like, the limitations of when you're a live act. We are working with you know, just a little bit of sound and you know, to bring all your own backline, of course. But we have a pop-up tent, so we have a nice infrastructure and team members to be involved to help you set it up. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions. I think we should have Brian go next, as we might have a lot of similar responses to operational questions. But I would like to briefly mention Queens Rising, that was announced formally today. This is a pretty amazing arts initiative, arts and cultural initiative that sort of came to be from, it was definitely pre-COVID, it wasn't during COVID, but it was multiple local Queens arts organizations and performing arts centers and venues, their sort of team, or, you know, main team members came together and just sort of brainstormed an idea of highlighting just all the incredible locations and artists and performances that take place in Queens. You know, we're really the world's borough, and there's so much to offer as far as types of performance and art. So this is an initiative that helps kind of highlight all of that. And being in our first year, as I mentioned, collaboration is wildly important, and our collaborators, our partners, you know, we're all working on this together and making sure that, you know, both big and small organizations are not left behind. And simply, if you're interested, if you're a venue or you have a festival or you're an organization that presents live performance, dance, please submit to become a partner. And we're also looking for artists to present their work at Queens Rising. Queens Rising will happen throughout June of 2022. So Astoria Park Alliance, our walking tour, will be involved with that as well. And, you know, there are people and organizations looking to collaborate. So I would suggest that you just continuously search for like-mindedness and look for organizations and people who can help you create your vision and put together what you're looking to do. Thank you.
And Jen, I'll choose the question. I had a good question for you, and now it has escaped me.
Oh, you should have put it in the chat.
I should put it in the chat. Why did I put it in the chat? I broke my own rules. That's what you get. That's what you get, King. Oh, I know exactly what it was. It was, so say you wanted to be part of Queens Rising, you could technically get a permit for a day in June in the park, create an event that was appropriate for to be performed or presented in the park, and then send that information to Queens Rising, and they would help promote it or become part of like the docket for Queens Rising.
Correct.
How it works. Okay.
Correct. We're not quite involved with the permit process, but I know the Department of Transportation, their open streets in particular, a lot of the people who are submitting to be performers at at these locations in Queens will sort of be involved with Queens Rising by default, as well as, you know, as well as many of the parks we've got. I know already there's some plans for music at Gantry Plaza State Park. We've got some ideas for Flushing Meadows, Astoria Park. I think there's a lot of really lovely park locations where, you know, you can sort of just, it could be like a plug and play if you get a generator, and it's sort of simple. But yes, there is all of the precursor to getting the permits and the approvals.
And it could be a smaller art project or an interactive project as well. It doesn't have to be a full festival to be part of Queens Rising. It could be your own small art project that you're doing that day. Correct?
Or right? If you're a live painter, we can just kind of set you up somewhere. I'm a big fan of live painting. It's one of my favorites. It's all happening right there.
I think that would be really cool. All right. Does anyone else have any questions for Jen about Queens Rising or her process of doing the Astoria Park walking tour? Did I answer that question about Queens-based artists correctly? Was that what you're worried about, Terry?
I can answer that for sure. So as far as the musical walking tour, no, I mean, we would like to have a lot of Queens-based artists, both at Queens Rising and Astoria Park. It's not exclusive, but we would prefer there be, you know, a few of the performers or artists be based in Queens.
Okay. That's great. Thank you so much, Jen. That was amazing. Thank you for the Astoria Park walking tour, and thank you for Queens Rising too, for all your hard work, in addition to coming here and talking to us tonight about
it's so exciting. Like I said, I keep saying, like, collaboration is such an important element to all of this. And, you know, it doesn't have to be your artistic collaborator. It could be like the person that just like can run some things for you, or like that person that helps set up. I mean, those are that's what makes the events go around, right?
You know, and leading into like talking to Brian and I have done events together in the park, and I would say, as far as collaboration goes, it could be on a larger scale. You could, hi Brian. It could be on a larger scale, or it could be two friends watching each other's, you know, helping each other set up in the park. Because one of the things about being in the park is that you have to look out for your surroundings. Am I right, Brian? Like that becomes a part of the process. And no more than when Sultry Art does stuff, because you actually can take nature elements into it as well. So why don't I I'm going to let Brian take over now, and I think some of the stuff will overlap it in the best way possible. So thank you, Jen, and Brian, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. And thank you, Jennifer, Elizabeth, Anthony, truly all of you all for sticking around for as long as you have. So I will try to be brief, but one of the things that as I'm sitting here listening, is I am so grateful for this program. So Ashley, thank you so much for putting it together. It is the kind of program that I wish, as both an events producer and artist, I had access to when I first started out. So really good stuff right here. And it's, I'll say it holds true no matter what scale you're doing. For the last 15 years, I've been working on large scale civic events with the city, including the New York City Marathon, the 5-Borough Bike Tour, MS Bike Ride, basically anything that shuts down the city and gives everybody who's not participating in the event a headache. I work on those events, and the process is almost exactly the same. You apply for a permit through the Parks Department, and it's, depending on what you're doing, it's still that $25 fee. The sound fee is still $45 for that permit. So there are some things that are oddly applicable no matter what the scale. Backing up to why I'm here. So I am one of the founders and trustee members for Sultry Art. Sultry is a nonprofit organization. We are based in Sunnyside, Queens, but we're not brick and mortar. So that means we do a lot of our activations outside, particularly in parks, also online, as we've been all having to do the last couple of years. We have a mission of creating rich community spaces that unite arts and ecology in unexpected, educational, and inspiring ways. There's a lot of words right there. They're all really meaty and delicious. And one of the best ways that I find to describe what we do is to say that we look at environmental issues and then we try to address them with art. Lots of different ways to do that. And I would also say that we are still, because we are so community focused and so like nobody here is getting a salary for what we're doing, we're very scrappy. So 100% Jennifer, collaboration is key. That's probably something that I'd like to echo a little bit more, because when we first started out, one of our very big first programs was something called Waglet. delightful event. We looked at bumblebees. We created this bumblebee waggle dance. We decided we were going to break the Guinness World Record of having the most people dance like bees at a single time, which is a thing out there. We're in New York City. We didn't think it'd be a problem. We still have yet to break this record. And it's a delightful event. And I'm not like, we celebrate bee themed art during the event. We get people out together. It's fantastic fun. But the thing that we realized that's probably the best way to enter into a lot of these events is to find the built-in audience. So Queens Rising, a fantastic resource in that you have so many different people coming together. So if you are a small scale organization, or if you're an individual artist with this grand ideas, I feel like these are fantastic ways to get started. So when we sort of figured out that was sort of the special sauce here, finding the places that we knew had the people already, I think that that's been one of the best ways for us to get our messages of, helping the environment out through audiences that are already attending the Earth Day gatherings in Union Square, for example. Actually, Astoria Park, one of the very first things I ever did was in Astoria Park with their Earth Day Festival. So it was a lot of fun. Ashley mentioned that she and I did something together in Queensbridge Park that was through summer stages. They were looking for artists to activate it basically in the back of the audience. So you had the big main stage event that you knew was going to have a bunch of people coming, and then just a real eclectic variety of different kinds of arts activations back there. So Ashley was illustrating on pieces of wood, and we had people like sort of telling us why they love Queens on these little like cut cookies of wood to sort of celebrate the stories that make up our families and like the heritage of like a tree versus people. But right next to us was a statue of a pig. It was just there. You could sit on it. So lots of really cool stuff all taking place in one space. I do have a few pictures. I guess I'll bring them up and just kind of show real quickly so you get an idea of what I'm talking about when I say scale for what we're doing as an organization. Let's see if I know how to screen share, because I am everyone's favorite second grade teacher right here, learning how to use technology. Is that working? I'm gonna guess y'all can see it. So this real quick is an event that we did at Smiling Hogshead Ranch, not a public park per se, but it is sort of a guerrilla founded program that is incredible. It occupies this really interesting sort of liminal space near the Sunnyside Yards, right at the border of Sunnyside and LIC. Former cement dumping site. They came in, they like just a bunch of really good folks came in and made it into a beautiful growing space. It's distinctive for being one of the only places that is a community garden that does not have a fence around it. So idealistically already very in line with who we are as an organization. And they have been very open to arts activations over there. I know they constantly find good friends to do things. And the nice thing about this, when you work with a different organization, a lot of them will work out some of the more permitting and logistical things for you. Or you can do it collaboratively. You don't feel like you're alone in the process, which I think was really nice for us. So we had a whole bunch of little activations that went on there. We had a seed library that was a literal library filled with seeds, and then people sharing stories about plants, which I thought was fantastic. Music activations, puppetry, love puppetry. I mean, if we talk about Queens being one of the, like, I think puppetry is one of the founding artistic elements of our borough, because I mean, Sesame Street is here. So this is shadow art that we had activations, and this I'm gonna, maybe this will be the last thing I talk about, because it's an interesting image, because it's obviously taking place at night, which is a whole nother bag to be considered when you're doing your activation, timeline wise. Obviously we have power going right there. So I loved hearing all the conversations about power, because it is always a challenge. There was no power at this park, but what we did have was a power dome, which I totally recommend. It's this magical thing. It cost $200. So for a multiple day event like we were doing, this was fantastic. We could recharge it. It ran all the lights for this particular unit, all of them being LED lights, so not a huge power draw, for I think 4 hours each time. So it was great. It gave us all the power that we needed. I also have had experience working with DOT and tapping poles, and unless you are a legacy event, it's going to be very difficult for you to access that power. It's just, you got to know somebody. People dressed up as mushrooms performing in the park, macrame sing-alongs. This I mentioned before, Union Square. So we were partnering with those folks over there just to celebrate our Waggle event and do mini Waggle events. And I think that's Ashley right there, working the summer stage tent. So that's a nice thing about also working with other organizations. In this case, they had their own tent, less to have to carry. You know, you only have so much bandwidth when you're planning to do activations in the park to begin with. So anything that people can bring to help out, it's just always welcomed. I think this was a Socrates Sculpture Park. One of the other things, I'll probably leave it with this, I know I said that before, but this time for real. The things that we'd like to do is we'll have a bigger sculpture, a bigger theme, a bigger message, but then we try to scale it to make it as accessible to as many people as possible. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to tap into families and give the kids something to do. Paint with mud was a very popular thing where we talk about soil science, and they can just literally paint with the soil that is in the area. In this case, this is part of our seed library. So they were making seed stories, talking about their favorite plants and how they connect to their families and queens. And yeah, real fun stuff. I am going to stop talking and stop sharing if I can figure out how. And I will let any questions come if there are any, but I know we've all been here for a little while. So I'll also just say thank you to all of you for sticking around, and thank you to Ashley for putting this together.
Oh, you're very welcome, Brian. Thank you. So like, I want to point out that Brian, those are some of the ideas you can do. The park can accommodate all kinds of things. It can accommodate visual arts, performing arts, and it can, the thing that's unique about Brian's art is that it actually incorporates the park into it. And what Brian also does really well is he engages the audience in the park, which is important to keep in mind, because you're going to have people in the park and they're going to be very interested in you, but they were not expecting to see you there that day. They don't know what you're doing, and they want to approach you, and they want to talk to you. And so it's a good idea to just keep in mind, if you can rehearse whatever you're doing really well, to keep in mind really the idea of what you're doing, and know that you're probably going to get a little knocked off course so that you can go back on course if you need to. There are no borders at the park. You can create one, but they're probably going to cross over them a little bit, which is great. That's one of the great things about interacting with the park. Would everyone agree, as far as doing events in the park, that that's something that happens? There's a lot of interaction.
And just to add to that, actually, like a very practical example is we had a canvas backdrop to one of the tents that we do. So we were doing all of our like talking points and engaging art things in the front, but the back was just paint that was made out of moss spores. So in theory, it would grow into like a bed of moss ultimately. And people were just having at it. So it was a great way for people to like feel like they could get just close enough to begin to listen to what you're talking about, and then, you know, warm up into learning more.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Sometimes you have to warm them up, and you have to have something that will easily engage them. So those are all good things to keep in mind as you're planning your event for the park, what your audience will be willing to do, what they won't be willing to do, and how you're going to engage them. And also, which we talked about a little bit earlier, the weather, as far as having a tent, as far as having electricity. These are all practical matters to think about when you're creating your park experience for everyone. So I don't know if anyone has anything they'd like to add to this presentation. If real quickly, is there one thing each one of our presenters would like to say is the one thing that's the most important thing to know about being in the park before we wrap, or one thing you wish you knew before your first event? Does anyone want to contribute to that? Nothing. I'll say, well, then I'll do it. I will do it. Like Anthony said, leave the park better than you found it. That's very important. Don't mess up the park. And don't be discouraged by the crowd. You don't know who you're affecting that day, because anyone could be listening to you. Anyone could be experiencing something. That's an important part of doing art in any place. But when you're doing it for your community, with your community, in a public place, know that you are making a difference, and it is affecting people, and that you really matter in your community. So thank you all for being here tonight. Does anyone else have any ideas now that they'd like to add? Oh.
I just want to echo what you said, because that's really, really wonderful to hear. Is, you know, we really are, we all do impact each other, you know, for good and the bad. So, you know, better leave the good stuff.
right. That's right. And the arts are the good stuff. So, oh, did someone have a question?
Yeah,
Carol,
I
did
just
you have a
wanted to
question?
add,
Oh, Anthony.
I just
Okay.
wanted to add
Sorry.
one thing, Ashley, just to echo Ashley's point about crowd size and not knowing, who you're impacting. One of the nice things about doing events in the park is that people are there all the time. So, maybe they didn't know there was an event that day or that there was an art exhibition that day, but they're walking through, they're there with their family, they're there with their loved ones, and they're like, hey, what is that great thing? And word spreads that way. So, maybe they weren't there by design, but they stumbled onto you. And not to get too cheesy, but like what Ashley said kind of reminded me of this quick poem that I wanted to share. It's called The Arrow in the Song. And goes like this. I shot an arrow into the air. It fell to the earth, I knew not where. For so swiftly it flew the sight, could not follow it in its flight. I breathed a song into the air. It fell to earth, I knew not where. For who has sight so keen and strong that it can follow the flight of song? Long, long afterward, in an oak, I found the arrow still unbroke. And the song from beginning to end, I found again in the heart of a friend. So you don't know where it's going to end up, but someone's going to hear it and it's going to affect someone, or someone's going to see it and it's going to affect them. And that's why we love public art. So thank you all for being the people that provide that for us.
That's really beautiful, Anthony. Thank
Did you
you.
have that memorized, Anthony? I like to think that you did.
I like to think that you did too. Wait, don't answer that question. Let's
Yeah,
just all
you
believe
did.
Anthony memorized that. Carol, I did see your question about security in the park. I think for larger events, Anthony, have you hired security in the parks?
We never have. And our biggest event was the Classic Car Show, which drew several hundreds of people. So no, we've never required security.
Carol, I would.
Nor has the Parks Department required us to get it.
Carol, if you are concerned, like you're afraid of, you're concerned with doing an event by yourself, I really do recommend like having a buddy, having a couple other artists be there with you and just, take turns, and because it's more fun that way. You have more people to carry stuff, and it's going to make a really great collaborative event. So I hope that helps answer your question. And Brian, Elizabeth, Jennifer, Anthony, thank you so much for being part of this. It went a little bit longer than I expected, but it was also many good things. And I wanted to say too, as far as collaboration goes, I'm from Artstoria New York. We have a page on Instagram. We also have an email. I saw someone mention the Cage Gallery. If you want to send us an Instagram link about that or an email about that, we're at ArtstoriaNY@gmail.com, and we're at ArtstoriaNY on Instagram. We just want to amplify whatever you're doing. If you have a show coming up, if you have a call to action, if you have a fundraising initiative, if you're an artist or an art organization that just needs a little bit extra support, send us a direct message and we will do our best to get it out to as many people as possible, because that's what I love about this community. That's what I love about all these people who are here tonight, and the arts just make the world a better place. So shoot your arrow, I guess, in the words of Anthony, right? Shoot your arrow, everyone. I'm going to bring this evening to a close, but we will have the recording up sooner or later. Everyone, thank you so much for being here and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.